earth is my home. I promise to keep it healthy and beautiful. I will love the land, the air, the water, and all living creatures. I will be a defender of my planet, united with friends. I will.
This is issue form, and my name is Commissioner Frank Avila. I'm a commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. And I have as my guest Josina Morita. She is a candidate for Commissioner of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. Thanks for being on the show, Josina.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
Yes, and you know, the office that you're running for is a very important office.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in Cook County, right?
Yep.
And Josina, why did you decide being a commissioner, run for commissioner of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago? Long name.
Long name, I know. I have a history of working for organizations with long names. So I think for a lot of reasons. For one, exactly what you just said. I say that Metropolitan Water Reclamation District is the most important agency that most people know nothing about. So I think it's as somebody who's worked in communities for the last 15 years, I think it's important to have people who can reach back to the communities that they come from and really engage communities and residents around the issues that MWRD does, because we do work on issues that impact them every day. They just don't necessarily know about it or think about it in that way. But also because I'm an urban planner by training.
Yes.
That's my background, is around land use development issues. I know that the board is going to be going through a full land audit of all of its land holdings as the second largest landowner in Cook County, infrastructure planning and regional planning as an urban planner, and also as a community organizer, again, reaching back to communities to educate them about water issues. How can they reduce water waste? How can they be part of the solution? You know, the same way my generation was engaged around recycling. I think the next generation needs to be engaged around how do they reduce water waste? How are they part of preserving water?
And you're right, I think out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
You know, when a person eliminates their waste, flushes the toilet,
it's gone.
no one even think of where it's going to go.
Yeah, and I think for folks who grow up in Chicago, you look out, you see Lake Michigan every day, you think of it as this endless resource.
Yes.
You know, but the lake levels are going down every year. The Great Lakes as a whole hold 90% of the U.S. water supply. So it's a huge responsibility. I think, you know, for everyday Chicagoans, it's something that we look at as this infinite resource. And unfortunately, it's not.
Right, and you're right, the awareness, we have to make people here, the residents here in Cook County, being aware of the environment. Then the next step is what? Education.
Yep.
And then the third step is what to do about it.
Yeah, it's action.
Yeah. And then that's why it's so important. And you're right, our agency, I think it's the most important political office to hold here in maybe the United States. I mean, every wastewater agency is the most important, but here in Cook County, we're the most important here in the state of Illinois.
I mean, I think that people would agree with that in other places too, just because of our scale, right?
Yeah.
MWRD has the largest water treatment plant in the world, you know, and we're so close. We relate to Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes, which is a huge water source. So it's very different than a water agency in Arizona
Sure.
or California.
Where no water at all. Yes, there. And you're right, we have the 7 plants here in Cook County. 3 are considered the largest in North America, and 1 is the largest in the world. That's Stickney. It could do about 1.4 billion gallons of wastewater a day.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around how much is done at that Stickney plant.
Yes, and you know, at the end of the day, we'll have 550 tons of it. You know, just think of it. Every day, 550 tons. We treat 5 million people.
Yeah.
And they want us to treat all the wastewater. And what's wastewater, Josina? Wastewater is poop and pee. And it's all the ingredients of personal care products that they give us.
Yeah. Well, it's an incredible responsibility, and you guys have done such a great job on the board. I think it's one of those boards also where when you're doing your job well, nobody notices. But if you ever are not doing your job well, everyone will notice. I think, You know, even what we saw most recently in West Virginia
Oh,
with the
my
water
God. Yes,
contamination.
yeah.
You know, you don't realize how every moment of your day interacts with water, from when you wake up and try to brush your teeth,
Yes.
take a shower, use the restroom. And this is something that the folks in West Virginia experienced. They said, I heard people on the news saying, you never know how important water is till you don't have it.
Right, because the good Lord made us what, 67% of water?
Yeah.
An elephant, 67% of water. A chicken. I mean, creatures
Yeah.
are made up of water. And just try living without water for 3 days. I mean, we could live without food for 30 days.
Right. But
But
not
without
water.
water is life.
Yeah.
Water is very precious there. And I'm glad that you're going to come on board. Our election is in March.
March 18th.
Josina Morita,
Yeah.
myself, and Tim Bradford.
Yeah.
We were slated by the Cook County Democratic Party.
Yeah, I couldn't be prouder to be part of this slate. We're a very diverse slate, not just racially as Latino, African American, and
Sure.
Asian American, but we represent the whole county, truly, with you being from the city, I'm from the northern suburbs, Tim from the southern suburbs, and we're incredibly diversely qualified as well. I think it's incredibly important to have you there as an engineer, Tim, who's worked in local government
Yes.
for so long. You know, I think how we partner with local government in the future is going to be incredibly important to the board. And myself, I would be the first urban planner on the board.
Right, and it's very important because our budget is $1.2 billion.
Yeah.
And for us, and we set the rules for stormwater management.
Yeah.
We passed the stormwater ordinance,
Yeah.
and now we're going to have to work with 125 municipalities, except the city of Chicago. But we work closely.
Yeah.
We're going to work with the city, but our ordinance will cover 125 municipalities out there, and so we have to work with them.
Right.
And so we have, and right now the district is going through a phase that we had large projects that we were doing. We had a program of large projects. Now these large projects are going to come to an end, and the projects are going to become smaller, and we have to decide on project which is environmentally good for the community, for the water environment. So this is what we're going to concentrate on now. There.
No, I think it's an exciting time at the district with the passing the watershed management ordinance, the consent decree, and
Yes.
doing the green infrastructure, disinfection, nutrient recovery.
Yes.
Some really exciting things, and again, because of the scale of MWRD, the scale of the Stickney plant, you're doing things that nobody else in the world can do.
Right. Talking about Stickney, we started a program on phosphorus removal.
Right.
And we're going to capture about 10 to 15 tons of it a year. And because phosphate is a depleting mineral, depleting. And so we're going to capture that and sell it.
Yeah, I saw some of the crystals.
Yes.
I've seen the crystals that you all produce, and it can be used for slow release fertilizer.
Yeah.
It can be sold. I think it's something like $400 a ton, and
Yes.
you're going to, it's a fantastic revenue source for,
And then,
for the
yeah.
district.
And then also we're going to be energy neutral.
Mm-hmm.
In 10 years, we're going to capture all that methane gas
Yeah.
and convert that to energy. And we're going to save the taxpayers $60 million.
Yeah.
And what's important, I think, what you have an asset to being on the board is land.
Yeah.
What to do with land.
Yeah.
Not only do we own the land here in Cook County,
Right. All over.
we have 12,000 acres in Fulton County.
Yeah.
See, that what shall we do with that land?
Right. And
Yeah.
right now it's being leased to farmers, which
Yes.
is great. But I think looking at our land holdings as a whole, for the first time in a long time, will be an exciting process to look at how do we maximize the utility of the land, both in terms of stormwater management, increasing permeable surfaces, investing in green infrastructure, but also to help reinvest in some of our communities that haven't been invested in.
Right.
There's huge portions of land in the south suburban areas, along the waterfront, and other areas that can be, recreational areas for families and communities to enjoy.
And that's correct. The Army Corps of Engineers is in charge of all the navigable waterways in Cook County, like the Chicago Standard Ship Canal, the Calside Channel, North Shore Channel. But we work under the Army Corps supervising all these channels. And so this is a very part of the waterways here in Cook County, and their initial came up in the watershed. See, right now the Army Corps of Engineers came up with a report. They came up with 8 different types of alternate
Right.
solutions. So now we at the district are studying
Right.
to see which is the best solution for the environment and for our operation.
Right.
Because the biggest thing is who's going to pay for it.
Right. And what is the impact going to be on taxpayers? What is
Yes.
the impact going to be on residents?
Yes.
Because, lots of things can be good ideas, but what do they actually look like in reality? What does implementation look like? And we, MWRD has been part of really large scale projects that, span decades.
Sure.
And so we have to be thinking about the next generation as
Oh,
well.
yes. And, the reason why they want to separate the watersheds is because of the invasive species.
Right.
The Asian carp, the big head carp, and the silver carp. But yet there's another carp out there that's coming up,
Which is that?
the black carp.
I haven't heard of the
Oh
black
yeah,
carp.
it's coming up.
Yeah.
It's coming up. And so maybe,
Yeah.
so we got a lot of invasive species.
Right, and not just the carp, right? You have the
Right.
zebra mussels,
Right,
you have the
yeah.
goby.
Well, you have 160 other invasive species that are
Right.
moving back and forth.
Right.
And so I'm glad that you mentioned that water is very important.
Yeah.
Conservation of water. That's why I told my wife, you take a bath once a week only, just conserve that water. But that's why we have to think of everything, how to conserve water.
Yeah.
As when we wash our hands, brush our teeth, do our cooking, taking
Right.
a bath, washing clothes, washing our cars, watering the lawn. Everything comes into effect here, and that's why who do we educate?
Yeah.
I mean, and how do we educate?
Yeah.
And that's why we have to educate the kids.
Yeah. I agree. I think focusing on the younger generation, because they're the ones who are going to be teaching their kids,
Yes.
over time. And this is a long-term process to educate and change behavior, to become more aware of the impact of the things that we do on water. Just like we have Energy Star appliances right now, I think one day we'll have Water Star. Thinking about not just energy, and but also thinking about how do we preserve water. And I heard a really fascinating statistic the other day that I had not known, that the majority of the energy used in the United States is used in relation to water. It's either used to move water, heat water, disinfect water. More than half of the country's
Sure.
energy.
Sure.
So water, is not just about water. Water is also related to energy as well.
And that's why at the district nutrient removal, we have a system there. We're going to cut back our energy removing the nutrients, and so we're going to start that this year. Plus wetlands. Wetland is very important. We have lost almost all of our wetlands in Cook County here.
Yeah.
We have very few wetlands here.
Yeah.
And maybe there might be some area that we could reintroduce wetlands.
Yeah, I was talking to an engineer the other day who's worked on constructed wetlands. It's fascinating how wetlands work in this way that, as man, we can't create machines that do what wetlands do.
No. As it flows through wetlands, it removes some of the toxics and the pollutants there. And that's why wetland is so important. We built the city of Chicago and Cook County over a marsh. This used to be all marsh, all wetland.
Yeah.
And so now that's why we took over flooding. And we're going to manage flooding here, and that's where the stormwater ordinance came into being.
Yeah.
Okay. And our mission is what? Our first mission is to protect our water supply.
Yeah.
Lake Michigan. That's our first mission. Our second mission is to treat wastewater, and third is managing flooding. So maybe down the line we'll have a fourth mission.
Yeah, I'm sure. And, the stormwater is something that's personal to me and so many people in Cook County, because the flooding has gotten so much worse over the last few years. The 100-year rains happening multiple times a year. I live in the northern suburbs in Skokie. We've been impacted by flooding. I've talked to people in Glenview, in the western suburbs in Westchester, and the southern suburbs and in the city. Flooding is unfortunately becoming more and more of a reality for so many people. And it's not just the financial toll, it's the emotional toll too. Talking to
the
people,
loss,
who've been flooded 15 times in the last 2 years. I've met people from Westchester. That's just stressful. the emotional toll that it takes on a family. You know, every time you hear the weather report,
Yes.
to think about all the damage that's going to come your way and the financial loss. It's really it's a huge issue.
And that's why on our green infrastructure, if we incorporate maybe more green infrastructure, we could capture the first inch
Yep.
of stormwater that comes out. And if we capture that first inch, we're eliminating that stormwater from coming into our system.
Right.
So then we don't have to treat
Right.
that first inch that falls down here in Cook County through
Right.
green infrastructure.
And that may seem like a little bit, 1 inch, but when you think about the entire county surface, 1 inch is a huge amount of water.
15 billion gallons.
15 billion
15 billion,
gallons
yeah.
is 1 inch.
Yes, 1 inch. It's a lot of water coming into our system. And so we'll capture that. And then there'd be less going into our system.
Yeah.
Less that we have to treat, so we're saving money, and less that's going to go into the deep tunnel or into the reservoir. So maybe we don't have to open up the gates or our locks to reverse the flow going into Lake Michigan. So it's a big, you know, we have a large research staff, and people from all over the world or the United States come and see what type of research we're doing. We have the top scientists here. I think we are the top wastewater agency here in the country, or maybe in the world, because we do know how to treat wastewater.
Well, you have a fantastic staff. I've met so many of the people who work for MWRD across the county in different capacities: engineers, IT, security, you know, machinists, everything. And not only are they doing a great job, but they talk about it's a great place to work.
Oh yes. And also we're going to go down to Springfield on the I&I, on infiltration and inflow, and try and see if we could give grants to the municipalities so they could go in and do private work, and giving grants to the homeowners to get the line from their home to the local sewer. Maybe they need a new lateral run, and maybe stop that I&I coming in.
That's fantastic.
So
Yeah.
we'll know this year,
Yeah.
and so I hope it comes through.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time in Springfield myself on the nonprofit side, working
Yeah.
on different issues. And so I know how much of a process it is to pass a bill down in Springfield, but I know that you guys have always done a great job advocating for our taxpayers on water issues.
Well, you know, what we do is like a bipartisan type. You know, you know, we're dealing with people. They don't have to be, you know, Democrat, Republicans, you know, Green Party. It's dealing with everyone.
Yeah. I always say, I know we have a partisan election that we have to get elected through, but I always say water should not be a partisan issue.
No.
Water is an issue that we should all come to agreement on because we're all impacted by it. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, Green Party, Independent, you still need water.
Oh yes.
And we all should collectively think about what are the best solutions to move our county forward, move our country forward to make sure that our water is protected for the next generation.
And also we have to protect our water supply, Lake Michigan, make sure that no one is discharging any pollutant or toxic chemicals into Lake Michigan. And don't forget, our border is only border along Cook County. So we have to work with each side of us.
Yep.
And work with them and see that they're not discharging anything else
Right.
in there. And so...
Right. Water doesn't recognize borders.
Water doesn't have any political boundaries.
Yes.
it just comes right down.
Right.
And you know, I'm glad you mentioned Westchester. Westchester, when it rains,
Yeah.
they have two streams there that when they meet and the water comes down, I mean, that whole area, I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
a massive flood coming in. And
Yeah.
any municipalities along this Plains River, too.
Oh, yeah. I live in Skokie, but we're very close to Glenview.
Yes.
You know, and I've talked to folks in Glenview, both at the Mobile Homes Association and others in the Des Plaines area, and the impact that they have on, you know, every time there's even a small rain, it's
Yes.
a big rain there.
Oh, yes.
Because they're so close to the river.
Yeah, and that's why any municipalities along this Plains River, as it flows down, I mean, Riverside, River Forest, and then it goes all the way
and into
down.
the city, into Albany Park
Oh,
area.
yes. Oh, my God, yes.
But the Foster Tunnel is a great partnership between
Yes, yeah.
MWRD and the city to
Right.
address the flooding issue there.
And that's why I said we're not in charge of stormwater in the city of Chicago, but we work.
Yeah, it's a great partnership. And I think that's an example,
Yes.
right, of what that partnership can look like in the
and,
future.
and we have to be partners with everyone out there because water is everyone's issue.
Yeah.
See, not only one person's issue,
Right.
but it's everyone's issue there. And and also we have to be concerned about what toxic chemicals are coming into the system.
Yeah. Now I know the pharmaceuticals, the chemicals, and fertilizer from A to Z. All those
Yes.
things end up in our water.
Oh yes, we had a problem out in Stickney a couple months ago. Is that we were discharging too much ammonium into our waterway, and then we found out that the way we treat wastewater is that we get the good bugs and the bad bugs. The good bugs eat the bad bugs.
Right.
Well, somehow cadmium got into our system and destroyed one of the good bugs. And we didn't notice that until we had did some more study on the quality of the water discharge into the Chicago Standard Ship Canal, and we found out we had too ammonia, so we had to notify the EPA. And so now we're trying to figure out where did this come from. See, so now we're trying to find out where did that cadmium come from, or how did it get there and kill the good bugs. So what we had to do, we had to get the good bugs from Northside plant, which the sludge line going from Skokie to Stickney, and we captured that good bugs and reintroduced it into our system.
I love how you just broke that down, because that's a much more complicated process than you just explained. But I think that, that's again one of the things that so much of what MWRD is incredibly technical and complicated, and there's always this tricky balance. But you all do it so well that we take it for granted, right? That's all taking the good bugs, and you make it sound so simple, but the folks at MWRD are doing great work.
And then
great
in Wilmette, we just completed a pumping station there. The gates there, we had a 30-foot gate there. And then one time, I don't know, it was last year, the year before, it rained and we couldn't get the gates up. So a couple of our guys had to go up manually, lift the gates up. So now, because of that, we are putting 3 10-foot gates there. And it's in operation now.
Yeah.
So, and we were good partnership with the Baha'i Temple.
Yeah, the Baha'i Temple's right there.
They're right there.
Yeah.
And the village of Wilmette. And the harbor. The boats there.
Yeah.
So that's what we do at the district, and please come out and vote.
Yes.
For Josina Morita, for Tim Bradford,
and Frank Avila.
Yes.
We will be number 72, 73, and 74 on your ballots. And for more information about me, you can go to www.friendsofjosina.com.
Yeah. Now your background, you mentioned you have a degree. Is that urban planning?
Yeah, I went to school right down the street from here at UIC.
Oh, UIC?
Yeah.
Now, why did you decide on urban planning?
I have always really found geographic, kind of planning and policy very fascinating. But for me personally, my mom is a disaster worker. She's a volunteer disaster medic. She's a physician's assistant, and she responds to disasters. And I remember when she came back, she was one of the volunteer medics at the Superdome at Katrina, and we talked a lot about how a lot of these so-called natural disasters are oftentimes man-made disasters in how we plan our communities and how we plan our cities. And so as somebody who's worked on policy and communities for a long time, the idea of how we plan our cities, how we plan our communities, that they're not just incidental or coincidental, that certain areas get flooded, that certain areas don't get flooded, that oftentimes it's very man-made in terms of how we plan, who we prioritize, who we don't prioritize in the planning process, and what we consider when we plan, and the unintended consequences of how we do and don't plan our communities is incredibly important. And so that's how I got into urban planning, was after Hurricane Katrina.
Well, I think that's good, because right now, as you mentioned, water is precious.
Yeah.
And we're depleting our groundwater.
Yeah.
Through ethanol. We're using 5 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of ethanol. So in your rural community, they may be depleting their water supply.
Contaminating their groundwater.
And what's going to happen, Josina? They want to maybe live around the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Everyone maybe from Arizona on up want to come to.
Oh,
where
yeah.
you mentioned what 90%.
Have you ever seen the map of the world at night? It's a really fascinating map. If you Google just the map of the world at night,
Yeah.
and you see the lights, right, of where there are people living,
Yeah.
where the lights are
Yeah.
on at night, and it's all around water. Cities, communities are all planned, and created around water, and that's from the beginning of time
Sure.
to now and into the future.
Sure.
And so I agree that people will continue to migrate towards water.
And here we have the Great Lakes there, and as you mentioned, we cannot make water.
Yeah,
The
it comes from the sky.
yeah, the
and
water cycle.
Yeah.
It precipitation.
Yep.
Then it evaporates.
Yep.
And even from when we sweat.
From our skin. Yeah.
And then it comes back again. So that water cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And who was mentioning that we've been drinking the same water that they used 2,000-3,000 years ago because
Yeah.
it's that water cycle here.
Yeah. Some people say water is the next oil in terms of it being such a precious
Yeah.
resource, but unlike oil, there's no alternative source
No.
for water.
No.
We have the water that we have, and we have to be good stewards of it.
You know what I say? I say wastewater the next oil. Because
Because you can create the fuel out of it.
yeah, wastewater is your fertilizer, energy, and water.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's very true.
So I think that's the next oil, and that's why we have here, especially in Cook County, we have about 5 million people living here in Cook County.
Yeah.
And you mentioned one thing that you mentioned that I like is how do you change the behavior,
Yeah.
the lifestyle? That's very hard to do.
Yeah.
And then where do we start? Awareness, education, and how do we implement it?
Right.
There, I mean, it's we have to, maybe we have to start with the kids more.
I agree, because I think behavior change happens over time, and I also believe that, it happens over time, and it starts with awareness, like you said. You can't fix a problem that you don't believe exists.
Right.
Right. And so I think so much of it is not making water this thing that's kind of over there in the lake. Water is the things that you use every single day, multiple times a day. And I think, just like the kind of heightened awareness that folks in West Virginia had, hopefully it won't take a catastrophe like that. But, we can have proactive education, engaging our young folks in our schools around rain barrels and, turning the water off when they're brushing their teeth, taking shorter showers.
Yes.
I grew up in California under drought conditions, and I remember, you weren't allowed to flush the toilet unless it was, wastewater, and you could put a brick in your toilet tank to make it a low flow toilet, and you didn't water your lawns, excessively. You didn't wash your cars excessively. You didn't leave the water running while you were washing dishes or brushing your teeth. These became a very daily reality for us because there was such a water shortage. And I think here we have an opportunity to be very proactive with the next generation, to be creative with the next generation.
So I appreciate the residents, the voters here in Cook County. Give a vote for Josina Morita, 74. Tim Bradford,
73.
3, and myself, Commissioner Avila, 72. So punch. Josina Morita, 74. Tim Bradford, 73, and myself, Frank Avila, 72. Any last statements to the
thanks,
audience?
Frank, for having me on the show. I'd be proud to serve with you on the board. And to the residents of Cook County, MWRD is an incredibly important race. We hope that you come out on March 18th and vote for the three of us.
Yes, please come out because we like what we're doing and we want to help the residents of Cook County. Health and wellness is one of the key. And, we all want to be healthy and well.
Yeah.